Hi everyone, welcome to this week's YouTube live stream. If you noticed, we actually have changed. We've rebranded from Hangouts on Air to YouTube Live. We've moved channels effectively, and that's going to allow us to scale these recordings and these trainings out even further. So thank you so much for joining us today on our new YouTube Live streaming channel. So today we are talking about improving your ROI using Google Analytics 360, AdWords, and DoubleClick. I'm Krista Seiden, Analytics Advocate at Google, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, by Charles Farina, who is the Manager of Digital Analytics at Analytics Pros. Charles, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure.
So if we go over into our slide deck, let's take a look at our agenda. So we're going to go through a few different topics today. First, we're going to look at an overview and demo of our ad integrations. Then we're going to look at using our remarketing integrations. And finally, we're going to do some exercises on attribution before we finish with your questions. Improving your ROI is really all about increasing the efficiency of your campaigns and reaching more of your target audiences. And so all of these topics are really working towards helping you understand that and get the most out of our products with that in mind. So as a quick reminder, submit your questions. There's a link on the screen to that form that you have linked in the invite for this event. But also, you can submit your questions using the YouTube Live chat box or question box on the right-hand side of your screen. So with that, let's go ahead and dig right in. But before we get started, I just wanted to remind everyone, today we're talking about a lot of our ad integrations, our DoubleClick integrations, and I wanted to remind everyone that Google Analytics and our ad products really are better together. So we'll talk about DoubleClick and AdWords. We won't get to BigQuery or third-party platform integrations, but they all work really seamlessly with the Google Analytics 360 suite, and today we're specifically going to focus on those integrations with Google Analytics 360. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Charles, who's going to go through some of our AdWords integrations to start. So thank you, Charles.
Great, thanks, Krista. So what I wanted to show you on the screen is just an overview, a quick overview of the AdWords and DoubleClick integrations with GA, and then we're going to dive right in. So as a reminder, if you haven't actually linked AdWords or looked at the reports before, there's really important information that you get by linking these two products together. Mm-hmm. If you're a search marketer and you're traditionally looking at your conversions or your performance only in AdWords or another product, you're typically only looking at clicks and conversions, but not looking at what happens in between. Likewise, if you're in Google Analytics, you're typically looking from the visit to the conversion, but you're not looking up the funnel all the way to the clicks and all that cost information you get. So in this report, you can actually see we have all of our clicks, our cost per click data directly side by side with all of that conversion information inside of Google Analytics. So we can really measure that full user journey. And there's a variety of really powerful reports that are available in here. You can analyze your campaigns by hour, make sure you're not losing efficiency later in the day. We have video campaign data. You can see what percentage of a video ad is actually being watched. There's really great data in here. Likewise, with DoubleClick, DoubleClick has a really great and strong integration with Google Analytics. If you're new to DoubleClick, DoubleClick has a suite of products, much like the GA 360 suite. There's DoubleClick Campaign Manager, DoubleClick Search, and DoubleClick Bid Manager, which we're going to talk about today. DoubleClick Campaign Manager allows you to easily launch and manage campaigns. DoubleClick Search allows you to manage all of those search campaigns across multiple networks, so not just Google, but even Bing and others. And DoubleClick Bid Manager is the programmatic platform and is also going to be very important for the remarketing integrations we're going to talk about.
So, Charles, one of the major benefits, I think, of integrating AdWords and DoubleClick with analytics is that you're no longer just reliant on that one conversion pixel. I know a lot of our media agencies will ask your implementation teams to implement a conversion pixel so that AdWords or DoubleClick can fire and be able to report on a conversion made. But I'd really like to point out that with analytics, you have so many more micro and macro conversions that you can now report on because you can see every step across the funnel where people coming in from those ad campaigns and what they're doing on your website.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And if we actually dive in and look at some of the DoubleClick integrations, we can see just that. So in this report, we can see on the left-hand side, we have DCM, DBM, and DoubleClick Search, DS, all available. We can start to see some of the power. So just like AdWords, if we were to click on the clicks tab, we get all that click and cost information directly in here. as Krista mentioned, your floodlights. All of your floodlights will natively integrate, which is extremely powerful. And in addition, you can actually see there's view-through conversions in these reports as well, which is really important. Traditionally, marketers only look at view-throughs kind of as a column and don't really know how it contributes in the overall effectiveness of a campaign. And we can just see by looking at this report, 90% of conversions for this particular DFA campaign are all view-throughs. And we're going to look at a little bit deeper when we get into multi-channel funnels to actually understand how view-through is really impacting our campaigns. Another just quick example, DoubleClick search. It's a great product. Here, just Bing. You can bring in all of that Bing data, just like AdWords. We get all those impressions, click, cost, dynamically integrated and linked directly into the suite. So you can bring that in to understand your ROAS, your ROI, and the performance of all of your campaigns.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful, having all of that cost information and that DoubleClick data right there in analytics. You can use your analytics data to slice and dice your ad data, and vice versa, your ad data to slice and dice your analytics data.
Extremely powerful. And the integration linking, if you haven't linked these products yet, it's so easy to do. Google's made it a fantastic experience, I think, to actually do so. So if you're linking AdWords, you just go through, you're going to click a few buttons. You can link as many AdWords accounts as you have to GA. And if you're a DoubleClick user, linking DoubleClick, you'll simply need to go to the All Products, and there'll be steps on contacting your account manager. And again, it's a really quick and seamless process to make that happen. So with that, we're going to talk a little bit about the user journey, from actually measuring all the way from that impression through to the conversion. And this is really important because now in Google Analytics, we have all of that data.
Yeah, and so to do that, we're actually going to go ahead and dive into Google Analytics, into a demo. And Charles is going to answer a few questions I have. So Charles, the first question that I have is, how would you identify landing page problems?
Yeah, so landing pages are a really important part of this integration. Once you have AdWords and DoubleClick linked, all of the traffic source information will be available. So you can easily find all of your visits or sessions which originate from those products. And landing pages are the first page a user sees when they get to the site. So it's really important when we're looking at the effectiveness of our campaigns to understand, is it a problem potentially with the content on the page, or more of a problem in the campaign and the targeting we have over in AdWords? So to identify landing page problems, I'll just share a technique that I really love in Google Analytics. So we can find our landing pages in our behavior section underneath site content, and right there is that landing pages report. Typically, when most marketers are trying to understand what pages or landing pages are working really well or really poorly, they'll simply sort by the bounce rate. And that's not necessarily the best way to look at it, because then you're going to end up with use cases where you have single visit pages, and you wouldn't want to spend time optimizing those. No. So for this example, the first thing we need to do is we need to isolate our paid landing pages. We don't want to look at all of our landing pages. So we could do that with an event segment, or we could add in a dimension. So I'm going to add in the medium as a secondary dimension. And then what we can do is we can filter this just for paid, which is going to be CPC in this instance. So now I've isolated all of our paid landing pages, and now we want to find out what pages are potentially overperforming or underperforming versus our benchmark. And there's a really nice feature in Google Analytics for benchmarks that I love, and that's the comparison option. It's right above the table on the right-hand side. And with this, what it's going to allow you to do is actually benchmark your own bounce rate for your site and understand what content around your site is overperforming or underperforming versus that particular benchmark. So
yeah, I think this is a really cool report. I actually think this is a very underutilized report in Google Analytics, for this this view of it. I know I very rarely use this, but when you were talking about it, I was thinking to myself how I was going to integrate this into my own analysis, because it really is a very useful visual of what's going on.
Yeah, it's very powerful. You can just scan the list and see, for example, this store.html page. When we drive traffic here, it's 180% worse performance than the average. And our homepage seems to actually perform 30% better. Now, for your particular site, you'll probably have a better traffic source distribution, but this exercise is a fantastic way to identify those landing pages.
Yep. Cool. All right. My next question is, how can we show the effectiveness of display campaigns?
Yes. So display, it's one of my favorite topics. So Google Analytics, I think, does one of the best jobs of allowing you to understand the effectiveness of your display campaigns. And the best part to really understand display is going to be in multi-channel funnels. because the majority of the time, display typically falls in as an assisted channel conversion, not usually a single touch point. It's usually part of a larger journey of a user where they might come display one day, email the next day. It's going to be a few different things.
Yeah, it really depends also on the target audience of the display campaigns. A lot of times display is more top of funnel than some of your other marketing efforts. And so really being able to account for the view through impressions and the impact on your sales and your conversion is really important.
Yeah, so in AdWords or DoubleClick, you're going to have your view through columns. But to really understand how it's interfacing with your other campaigns, we can do that in Google Analytics in our multi-channel funnels reports. So on the left-hand side, if you go to multi-channel funnels, underneath conversions, we're going to start off by looking at the top conversion path report. And right now, Google, there's a beta available, so you just have to contact your account manager if you're interested, to actually bring in view-through impressions into multi-channel funnels. And we can see that when we search for display. So we're using right now the Google Merchandise Store as our demo account. You guys can all use the Google Merchandise Store too to demo, because Google just released it to the whole community. Isn't that right?
We did, yeah. Very exciting. You can find out more information on our blog, but there is the whole demo account that's available for the Google Merchandise Store. You can go in and play with all of the data that we're collecting for that store so that you can actually try out a lot of these things. In fact, you can try out or try to answer some of the questions that Charles and I are talking about right now, just to work on your own skills.
Perfect. So in here, we isolated in display. So what we're looking at right now is every conversion that had a path length of 2 or more. So these are assisted conversions. I'm going to select a path length of 1 or more, which is all of our conversions. And when we look at this, we can start to really understand how display is leading to conversions. As Krista did a really nice job of talking about before, once you link DoubleClick, all of those floodlights, all of your conversions or goals you set up in Google Analytics, and your e-commerce transactions can be filtered too to actually understand. And in here, when we have that beta enabled, these eyeballs are view-throughs. So these are display impressions. The user didn't click on the display ad, but they saw it, and then they came back and converted. So we can actually see how those view-through impressions and where exactly they fit in the user journey. So we don't have to guess if display is really impacting our site. We can actually go to this report and know exactly how it is.
That's really powerful and something that until now we really haven't been able to look at. That really helps us get a much more full understanding of what's going on in that user journey. So Charles, I have one more question for you in this section. Can you show us how to measure funnel progress?
Yes. So funnels is another really important topic, especially for search marketers. When we're trying to tie it all the way from that impression all the way through to that conversion, usually you want to do that with funnels in some way. Now, Google Analytics Premium launched one of my favorite features, which is custom funnels.
My favorite feature too.
Custom funnels, we can find this in the customization section. And if you click on the new custom report, there's this funnel beta. And if you haven't used this before, again, as Krista mentioned, I would recommend using it in your own account or using the demo account and starting to use this. These funnels allow you to do either user scoped funnels or session scoped funnels. So we can actually build a funnel across multiple visits if we want to. So for this particular example, let's say we want to identify new paid users, any user who came to our site for the first time from a paid traffic source, and identify them further down our funnel. And we can do that really easily with this custom funnel feature. So in here, the first thing we're going to do is select a medium, and we're going to enter CPC, which indicates that it's paid traffic. Then we're going to add in our user type dimension, which indicates that they're a new user. So we'll just enter a new visitor, and we'll label this as our new paid users. And then all we have to do is add in our second and our third stage. So for our second stage, let's say we want some sort of interactivity on our site, which we can define as clicking on one of our products. So all we have to do is pick up one of our events that we've tagged on our site. We'll enter in product click. And then lastly, we'll add our add to carts. And probably my favorite part of this particular feature is that when we save this funnel, it's actually retroactive. We don't have to wait to collect. We can immediately analyze this funnel on all of our data.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. We've had goal funnels in Google Analytics for a long time, but they've always been the kind that you have to set up and then start collecting data, so they're not retroactive. They also are limited to certain hit types. and custom funnels kind of blows them out of the water by opening up the hit types and also making them very retroactive.
And the best part, we're going to get into this next, but these funnels also integrate with your remarketing connection with AdWords or DoubleClick. So you can actually build a funnel, and when someone abandons on a certain step, isolate that particular audience and then make it available for targeting.
Yeah, that's a super powerful feature, to be able to just click and create an audience right here from this drop-off funnel, an audience that you've identified as potentially high value, high risk of falling off, and you want to bring them back. And not only can you use that in remarketing, you can also use those audiences in Google Optimize 360. So you really can close that full loop of bringing people back to a site that you've now optimized for a personalized experience to help you drive your conversions.
That would be a great place to optimize your landing pages.
It would be.
All right, so next up, we want to spend a little bit of time talking about the remarketing integrations. These are really important. When we're talking about increasing the efficiency of or improving your ROI, this is a great area where we can do that, because we're going to be able to isolate audiences, reach users with more targeting than we ever had before, and it's really going to bring this home. So to start off with, just as a quick overview, let's compare the traditional way of remarketing versus the way we remarket with Google Analytics. Traditional remarketing is simply where if you want to build a remarketing list for a set of users, you would grab a pixel or a tag from AdWords or DoubleClick, and then you'd paste it somewhere on your site, typically on all pages, and then you'd have a list of anyone who visited your site. And that's fine, but it oftentimes requires assistance from IT, which can delay you being able to launch those. You get really limited information. You only get the information that you tagged at the time of setup. And those lists aren't pre-populated. You actually have to wait to collect a big enough size before you can actually reach those users. Now with our Google Analytics remarketing integration, which we're going to talk through, there's no development required. The power is in your hands. You can instantly leverage all of the data on your users, meaning everything you're collecting in GA. Your lists are actually pre-populated. You don't have to wait anymore. And the targeting options are so much more powerful. So what we'd like to do now is walk you through a quick demo of this. And I'm personally really excited. So to set this up, I'd like to maybe talk about one of my pain points that I see happen all the time. And that's where I purchase a product or I sign up for a service, and then I'm a happy customer, and then I start seeing ads for that same product that I've already bought. And oftentimes when I talk with clients or customers about why that happens, the reasons that we talked about before are the reasons why. They weren't able to get the tag to exclude their users or something else. And I'm going to show you how easy it is, for example, to include someone who signed up or already subscribed, and then exclude them from all of your marketing efforts so you're not wasting money.
So you're not haunting users who have already bought your products.
Yes, the annoyance is another really important one. So with this, what we can do is we're going to use advanced segments. So advanced segments, we're just going to add a segment. And with this, advanced segments are, you can think of them like audiences. And Google already has a number of audiences built for you. So there's an audience right now called converters. Anyone who completed a goal or purchased a product. And what we can do is we can actually select this audience. And if you click on the actions, there's a build audience prompt. And when we build that audience, what this is going to do, it's going to take us through a very quick process. We're now in the admin section of GA. We select our AdWords account, or if you're a Google Optimized user, as Krista mentioned, you can send these audiences there as well. And then you simply set your membership duration, your look back windows, and then you give it a name. So we can say users.converted. And then we'll save this audience. And then if we switch over to AdWords, it's so easy to begin immediately using these audiences. So this is what it looks like in AdWords. So if you go into the shared library in your AdWords account, your audience will be right there under the audience option. And here's our users that converted. And you can see the size of your audience that's populated. But also, I think a really underutilized feature of this is the similar audiences. So you already have a list of users that have converted. AdWords will automatically build a similar audience list based off of their profiling. So these are more customers that Google thinks are likely to come to your site and convert, can really open up that opportunity.
Yeah, I think this is a really cool topic because what we do is we actually use our Google proprietary data of demographics and other information that we know about users and compare that to your high value converters. And we say, hey, we have some people that look very similar to the people that you've already identified as being high value to them. So I think this is a really valuable feature that people should be utilizing here.
Absolutely. And to exclude that audience, just to complete that example, all you have to do is apply that audience to exclude in a campaign. Super easy, and you're done. We didn't have to involve our development team. There was no tags or pixels. As long as you go through the prompts in your Google Analytics to link these products together and ensure your privacy terms are up to date, you're all set. So with that, just want to highlight the different types of remarketing we can do with GA. We could probably have a webinar or hangout on each one of these, but there's general remarketing, which is what we talked about right now. One of my favorites is remarketing lists for search ads. This allows companies to actually enter auctions for different types of keywords that you would never normally do. So let's say you're a retailer and you sell shoes. You probably wouldn't want to spend any time or money bidding on the keyword shoes because it's too generic. Someone could be looking for bowling shoes or running shoes or some sort of fashion shoes. But what RLSA does with Google Analytics is it allows you to take these audiences and you can qualify them, and then only someone who's been to your site through this Google Analytics remarketing integration would see those ads. So you could bid for the keyword shoes, but you're only bidding for your qualified users and not anyone else. It's a really impactful one, and I've seen a lot of success with that. There's also smart lists, state-based audiences, where you can immediately exclude users from audiences based off of things they've done on your site. There's dynamic remarketing. So if you're using custom dimensions and capturing different types of data about your users or your content, you can actually dynamically display that information in ads. And lastly, there's this DoubleClick bid manager integration. So everything we're talking about in the AdWords example, you can do through the DoubleClick suite through the DBM connection as well. Really easy.
Cool. That's a great overview.
Thank you. So to get started, again, super easy. Just go into your property settings. You'll see your audiences under audience definitions. You can create new segments. You can also import segments from the GA Marketplace, which is a great way to get started quickly if you want some ideas, but super easy to do. So with that, I'd like to talk a little bit about attribution, something that I'm very passionate about. So we're going to do a quick example and a group exercise. So I encourage you to follow along in your own Google Analytics. So everyone talks about attribution, but one of the questions that I often hear is, do I need an attribution model? I think we can answer that today. So we're actually going to go in, and I'm going to help you decide if you need an attribution model. We're going to look at and be able to answer questions for your business. For example, how many touches happen before a user converts on my site? How long does it take our users to convert? And do our marketing channels work together or not? And this is important because if we go through this exercise and you find out that most of your traffic only comes from a single traffic source, then you don't need an attribution model. You're perfectly fine the way you are. But we can understand that today. So
you could also follow along in the demo account just in case you don't have access to an account of your own or for your own company.
Perfect. So in here, we're going to go to multi-channel funnels where we were before today. So again, in your conversion section, there's a drop-down for multi-channel funnels. And we're going to start off with our path length report, one of my favorite parts of multi-channel funnels. And the path length report tells you the number of touches it takes your users to convert. So in here, for the Google Store, again, we have all of our conversion types. So we can select an individual floodlight. You can select an individual goal. So maybe if your business has different objectives, some of it's lead capture, some of it's e-commerce, you can filter it for how you want. For now, let's just focus on transactions. We're only interested in users who purchased. So we'll save that, and you can see everything updates. And there's some really important data that this is telling us right off the bat. So path length and interactions is, again, the number of touches. How many, essentially, visits or sessions does it take for them to convert? So 35% happen in a single conversion, which tells me that the other 65% of my traffic is taking 2 all the way to 12 plus more touches before they're converting. So if I'm only looking at a single, maybe first or last touch attribution source, 65% of my traffic may be misattributed. So the Google Merchandise Store absolutely needs an attribution model in this example.
I think this is a great report to point that out. I think it's a report that a lot of people probably don't spend a lot of time looking at, but as you just showed us, you can learn some very valuable things in terms of how many of your conversions are really taking multiple touch points.
Yeah, this is a really great place to start the conversation around an attribution model. There's no way you'll be able to decide today, but I think it's just extremely important. If we switch over to the time lag report in multi-channel funnels, again, we're just looking at transactions, but you can change that for another conversion if you'd like. We have a really great report here, which tells you the amount of time in days it takes your users to convert. So for someone actually purchasing a product on Google Store, there's a time lag in days. So 0 days means the same day. So we know just by looking at this, about 58% of their conversions happen in a single day. And then if we look 1 to 11 and 12 to 30, we can start to see the breakdown. So 20% of our traffic converts 12 to 30 days later. And if we wanted to, we could even change our look back window up to 90 days to explore this even further. But this is a really great way of actually understanding how long does it take your users to complete those various actions. And for example, if we're using paid media to influence or remarket or try and get our users to come back, we can start to understand and isolate those user journeys and understand if that's improving our efficiency, if it's making it longer, and really get in at what's working.
Yeah, definitely. That's another really great example and another underutilized report, I think, in Google Analytics.
Yes. And then lastly, I just want to highlight how you can actually see how your channels work together. So in the top conversion path, there's a great visual where you can actually see all of your traffic sources and their connections. So again, we're just looking at transactions. I'm going to change my path length to all, which I do normally when I use this report. So I'm seeing all of my paths, even if they're single conversions. And using this, we can do something like look at display like we did before. And remember, those eyeballs are our view-through impressions. But we're not limited to just looking at this at a channel level. We can get really granular, especially with these ad integrations with Google. So if we add a secondary dimension, we can add, for example, our campaign or source medium path. So we can actually see which display campaigns are these originating from. So here's our Google Merch Store accessories. We can actually see some referrals, all of our direct traffic, everything in a single report.
That's really powerful.
So you can play with this. You can do ad content, keywords, anything that you're tracking over in AdWords should be available directly in these reports.
I think that's really great. You know, Charles, I think it would also be awesome if we could take some of this information and visualize it in Data Studio. Do you think you could show us how to do that?
Yes. So Data Studio is part of my favorite new addition to the GA360 suite. So what we're going to do is I'm going to open up Data Studio and show you a report I made. I already had a kind of a template for it, so this was really fast for me to make, probably about 30, 45 minutes, and I had the whole thing set. So hopefully Data Studio will load. Try again.
Well, while we wait for that to load,
we
can just talk about some of the benefits of Data Studio as you're bringing this up. So you may know, or you may have heard about Data Studio and Data Studio 360 that we launched as part of the 360 suite. But it's really a great way to visualize your data and bring data in from multiple different sources, such as Google Analytics or even a lot of third-party data sources, Google Spreadsheets, and really bring it all together. So I see you have that up now, so why don't you maybe go ahead and tell us more about this.
I'd love to. So what's really exciting about this is I'm a longtime user of Google Analytics, and dashboards I've always felt limited. I couldn't bring in my own branding. I couldn't have more than 12 widgets. And as Krista mentioned, different data sources were kind of challenging to handle, especially if I wanted to bring some data from Google Sheets or somewhere else. It wasn't really the right place to maybe do that. But Data Studio is fantastic for all of these use cases. So in here, from an ad perspective, you can actually bring in all of that data we talked about today, all of your costs, revenue, some of the transactions along the way, and we can start to see some of the power of Data Studio. We have our date range, so I can change my date range, look at any window. But in here, I also have a filter. So if I wanted to look at individual campaigns and see their performance, I can easily go in, select an individual campaign, and my whole report will refresh for just that. In addition, I think what's really nice to highlight is you can have multiple sheets. So you don't have to throw everything into one little sheet. You can actually break it up and start to really put together, I think, a nice story. So in the second sheet of my report, we can see our sessions and our channel information, so I know where my revenue is coming from. But I really like this way of looking at my ad groups. So in my ad groups from AdWords, I can actually build out a plot, and I can easily find outliers for any given date range. Which campaigns or ad groups am I running that are costing me money or I'm not making revenue? Or I can hopefully find some instances where I have low cost but high revenue, such as my all web pages ad group.
Yeah, I think that's a really great visualization, something that we don't traditionally have in a Google Analytics dashboard, but something that users may have put together in other platforms prior. It's great to be able to pull all of that in with your Google Analytics data, with all of these data sources in one place now, because doing something like spotting those outliers is now really, really easy to do here, and you can take action on that right away.
Absolutely. And I think the last report I'd like to highlight in here is the ability to bring in those different data sources. So this has a live connection to AdWords and GA, but anything that you have in BigQuery, Sheets, your own SQL databases, you can connect to as well. So there's a great connector for all of the Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest data. You can actually automate that into Sheets and simply connect it to Data Studio. And now we have a live connection to grab our fans, our followers, our reach. If you're doing any paid campaigns, we can bring in all that information. But Data Studio really allows you to build that story. You're not limited to just one data source. You can bring in all of that rich, good data and then empower all of your decisions right from there.
Charles, one thing I really like that you've done here, both on this page and also on the first page, is bring in little icons that really make it very visual as to what you're talking about. So you have the different social media icons on the first page. If you want to bring that back up, you had all of the different device icons to show that you were talking about mobile or desktop or tablet. If you scroll down there really quick, yeah. So it's really a nice visual way for people to immediately be able to understand what it is that you're pointing out at a very quick way. So I think that's great.
Yep, and extremely easy to use. I think you guys did a webinar last week on Data Studio, correct?
Yeah, we've been doing several different live events on Data Studio. So definitely check out one of those, the recordings, to learn even more.
Great.
So why don't we go back over to our slides and just quickly go through those takeaways before we get into our questions. As a reminder, we do have a few questions that have come in through the YouTube Live format and through our form, but we have a few minutes, so please do submit your questions if you have them. We would love to answer them. Great. So we covered a bunch of things today. We covered our overview and demo of our ad integrations using remarketing integrations, and we did a bunch of exercises on attribution, as well as showing you how all of that data can be visualized in Data Studio. Charles, do you have any last thoughts on this before we go into Q&A?
I just think this is a really great overview of how connecting DoubleClick and AdWords and Google's ad products with GA really brings that full user journey together. We learned some really important things. I think the multi-channel funnels with display, view through impressions, there's really nowhere else where you can get that type of insights. Mm-hmm. And that remarketing integration, there's just so much value and opportunity there. And I'm personally really excited about Optimize, which you mentioned before. Bringing those same audiences into Optimize, again, helps you from an ad perspective, because now you can actually change content really easily as well.
Yep, I think that's great. So just really quickly before we go into Q&A, I wanted to bring up our resources. So we have a Help Center article there on GA remarketing. Our Help Center in general is a great resource for you guys to look up information about any of these topics that we've touched on today. So that's support.google.com/analytics. And then we're always available on social media. So Google Analytics is at Google Analytics on Twitter. I'm at Krista Seiden, and Charles is at Charles Farina. So thank you guys so much. And with that, we're going to go ahead and start taking your questions. All right. So I have the first question for you, Charles, from Sebastian. Sebastian would like to know, can I improve my device's ROI in the same manner with Google Analytics and AdWords and DoubleClick integrations?
Yeah, so for devices, I think you're referring to mobile and tablet. So there's a few different ways to do that. With Data Studio, I showed you how you can easily start to segment all of your campaigns on the fly, isolate any individual device type. I know AdWords has some really strong features on that side as well. AdWords actually has the cross-device reporting, which is a really great feature in AdWords. So Google has the Google Graph. So anyone who Google knows as a user, they'll start to actually identify them across those devices for you if you don't always have a logged in experience. Google Analytics right now is really strong at logged in cross-device experiences. So if your user is logged in or you know who they are when you send them emails, we can actually collect their user IDs and then stitch those together, and everything we talked about today would apply for those users.
Yeah, that's great. So I think maybe a precursor even to this is a question we get from Kelly, who would like to know, how should we prepare our AdWords or analytics prior to integration? What should we watch out for?
That's a really great question. So from a Google Analytics perspective, I think it's really important to take a look at your traffic sources and make sure they're all accounted for and relatively clean. And you can do that by just going to the channel reports in GA, and you want to make sure that your organization is tagging all of their media that they're driving to the site consistently. And that's going to be really important, especially for multi-channel funnels, where it's reliant on the way you're tagging. From an AdWords perspective, you probably want to make sure you have some nice campaigns and everything architected nicely there. But other than that, it should all seamlessly connect. The one thing I would definitely recommend is after you link them together, is taking a look and comparing maybe your clicks and your sessions column and making sure everything matches up. I can't count how many times I've found where there's problems actually on the site itself. Like, for example, no one knew that the developers were stripping off all the parameters, and
I've had that headache before.
And all of your traffic sources go missing. But it's a great way to actually improve, I think, your analytics in a variety of different ways by going through that.
Thank you. Brett would like to know, how is multi-channel funnels valuable to me if I don't run paid campaigns, but only organic or referral traffic?
Yeah, so that's another excellent question. So when we start to have conversations around social media or organic, there's always earned versus owned, especially when you have email or other touch points engaging with your users. And you can answer a lot of really valuable questions with multi-channel funnels for non-paid use cases. So for example, social. If you want to know how much social you're driving from the site versus how much social your users are organically generating, as long as you're tagging all of your media, which again, really easy to do with GA, you can actually go in and, like we did with those advanced segments to identify users that converted, we can identify, for example, users that first came from social or users that first came from organic, and really associate the true value versus something that maybe was more of assisting or less of a touch point. But again, there's really important stuff around the user story, those path lanes, those time lag reports, really allows you to understand how long it takes from when someone first finds you for them to actually do the things that you want them to do on your site.
Yep. So Krista would like to know, where can I find more information on dynamic remarketing? So that's a great question. Our help centers are always a good resource of information, especially on topics like dynamic remarketing. We also have a lesson on dynamic remarketing with GTM in the Analytics Academy course for Google Tag Manager. So if you're implementing it through Google Tag Manager, go ahead and check that out as well. But I would say first and foremost, I would point you to the help center. All right, so we have another question from Yep. We are currently doing RLSA for our campaigns through AdWords. Can you elaborate how RLSA, such a mouthful, through Google Analytics is different from AdWords?
Sure, and that's a great question. So at a foundational level, it's not really that different at all, because what you're doing probably traditionally with AdWords is you've added a tag across your entire site, and then you have an audience of anyone who's visited on your site. And you can do that with GA really easily by just building an audience of all of your users in GA, which is going to be effectively that same audience. Where Google Analytics gets different is where you have more targeting options, and you can actually qualify that user further. So for example, on the Google Merchandise Store, maybe we only want to target people who actually clicked on a product instead of visiting our site, or added something to the bag, or from Brett's talk, someone who came from organic or social, we want to target them differently. So the AdWords or the analytics integration with AdWords allows you to really focus on qualified and highly relevant audiences versus kind of blanket, which you traditionally do with AdWords.
Great. Amsel would like to know, are there any plans for multi-channel funnel custom segment support? Conversion segments exist, but are pretty limited. That's a great question. We are always working to improve the product. Charles would like this too. My analyst side would like this too. I can't go into the details of our roadmap, but this is noted and certainly something that I know a lot of people would like to see. Ian would like to know, we are able to connect our GA goals to AdWords and use these to optimize our SEM programs using automated bidding strategies. This is great, but when will we be able to connect GA to DoubleClick?
So I believe DoubleClick already has a GA integration. If you go to the DoubleClick Help Center, and maybe Krista and I can look at this after, but there is an ability to bring some GA data into DoubleClick, but we can follow up with that.
Yeah, I would say the same. Let's check the Help Center first, and we'll follow up on that. Okay, so a couple more questions here. Do you have, Mary would like to know if you have any suggestions for optimizing AdWords landing pages.
Oh, that's a great question.
I'm sure that you have many suggestions for this.
So landing page optimization, again, it's a really critical part of maintaining and improving the efficiency of your campaigns. So I think the easiest example is probably going to be Optimize, and even more so with Google's announcement in the last few weeks that there's a free version of their Optimize tool coming out, and I'm personally really excited about that. So that's going to allow you to easily go in and play with different dynamics, different creatives, and understand what's really resonating, and also learning what doesn't work, because that's just as important. But with that actually, I think, puts the power back in your hands to really display the most meaningful content and story and experience for those users to really see what's working. And then with Google Analytics, when we went through that exercise and identified which landing pages were working or not, that's a really great place to start to really get those ideas or understand where you need to focus your time. So
a follow-up question on landing pages is from Evan, and he would like to know, what is the right number of calls to action on a landing page?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
Debatable.
So I mean, I'm always kind of a fan of having a primary and a secondary, but I know there's different experts and they have all different recommendations. For sure.
I think that my gut says you should test it.
Can't beat that.
Yeah, figure it out. Every business is going to be different. You may have multiple calls to action that work for you or just one, and if you test it, you really can find out what that sweet spot is for your business. All right, so I have one more question here. I think this is kind of a good little wrap up for this section. So Sarah would like to know, what results have surprised you from your work with attribution? And I'll add on to that with just any recommendations that you have or kind of takeaways from your work with attribution that you would like to give to our audience.
Yeah, so I think probably the story that has surprised me the most is I worked with one client, and there was a situation where their particular company was actually paying commission to the channel manager, so organic, social, paid, based on a last touch attribution. Ooh. And when we actually went in and started looking at multi-channel funnels and also what was happening, it was really surprising. So what ended up resulting is that every channel would basically resort to trying to drive that user last. So email would drive coupons and promotion codes, social and paid would all do remarketing because they wanted to be last, and no one really wanted to work together within the organization to really, instead of mapping to the way the business was doing commission, to the way the users actually wanted to interact with their brand. So in just looking through multi-channel funnels and understanding that, all right, there's never a single touch for the majority of times where that user is only interacting with that one channel, you have to share and you have to actually work together. It really empowered that organization to change the way they were actually comping in a better way, so everyone was getting part of it, and it was really effective. So I think that is just a really great part with multi-channel funnels, is it's so easy to go in, have that conversation, explore, and answer those really important questions.
I love that example. I cannot tell you the number of organizations that I have worked in over the years who are always fighting for credit for that last touch attribution, not necessarily in terms of compensation, but everybody wants to say it was their campaign that drove it, which is why I think it's so very important that we look more holistically at all of the different touch points along the way. So with that, I think we are going to go ahead and close out. Thank you, Charles, so much for joining us today. You truly are an expert in this field, and our users, I know, have benefited from having you here. So thanks for joining us.
It was a pleasure.